Drink it in, drink it in, drink it in, man.
It is picked off by the line. Darius Slay's got it. Coming back right side 25. Picks up a block at the 30. Darius at the 40.
Drink it in, drink it in. Drink it in, drink it in, drink it in, man.
Rolls to the right. Stafford throws deep. Got a man out there. End zone. Caught. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Stafford!
Drink it in, drink it in.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions! Cornbread!
Drink it in, drink it in, drink it in, man.
Detroit Koolaid. What is going on, Detroit Koolaid drinkers? We are back in the house right here on the aptly named Detroit Koolaid Podcast. I'm your host. I'm your boy, Derek Oakrey. We're going to get to Grifka here in a moment, but man, we are knee-deep in free agency. They ended up going on with free agency despite all the craziness that's going on in our world. So it's given us some things to think about. And just like it has in the past, NFL free agency does not wait around. Started on Monday. Here we are recording on a late Tuesday night here. And we got lots of signings, but we're going to focus on the Lions, people they brought in, and people that have left the Lions and talk all about it. So we're going to do that with the one and only Grifsky. What's going on, buddy?
Wait, hold. Oh, dang it, man. I just lost out on a bid on eBay for a roll of toilet paper. Dang it, man. I knew my bid would get outbid. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
I mean, you can go wait in line for, hours and hours with the apocalypse. But yeah, we're not going to get all into that, Grifka. We got way too much to talk about. We're not even going to do some random news and notes. We're just going to get right into free agency. So, Grifka, I want to kind of go down the line. So the Lions signed Danny Amendola way back in the day. Sounds like centuries ago. But that was before it got going, and, 4 or 5 million. My case, I'm always a little hesitant when the guy's up there in the 34, 35 years old, especially at the receiver position. We talked about it a little bit, but now that you see how things went down, what are your thoughts on Danny for the 1 year, $4 to $5 million bucks? You happy with that?
Yeah, still like the contract where it's at. 1 year, you're not sinking a whole lot into the guy. And once again, if the Lions look to maybe draft somebody and, one of those late round guys, he could be a mentor to him. I don't think, he would be so much of a mentor for one of the bigger guys, like you mentioned, Travis Fulgham last week. They're just two different positions. So, that young slot guy, maybe help him out, learn the ropes, what to watch for in the pros. So, yeah, I really like that deal.
Yeah, I guess I like it more because I see all the crazy numbers that are being thrown around, and it just seems like this guy's a vet. He seemed to like it here. He's got grit. He's kind of grimy. He gets it done. I'd like to see him find the end zone a little bit more or be a little bit more dynamic at times, but I think, that cost, even with an older player, is definitely something we need. He's a good locker room guy, so I like that. Grifka, do you want to try to give Vaitai's first name a try or no? For the people, of course.
No, I've seen that name hundreds of different times, and I think I pronounced it 100 different ways.
Oh man, I think I'm a little gun shy too here on the podcast to give it a try. But I saw Jeff Risdon over at Lions Wire. He called him Hal, which I thought was awesome. Hal Vaitai. So we may have to go with that on the show. Just simplified it for us, which I like. I'm going to pitch this one to you. I mean, they got rid of Rick Wagner. That was something I know you were a proponent of. You talked a lot about it. I was the guy saying, yeah, he's not that,
Not that great.
But I always kind of defended him because I was kind of like, we don't have anything better. Or what are you going to get that's better? But sure enough, they went and cut him, saved the $6 million or so, I believe, in cap space. And move forward. I was 6 to 9. I saw some different numbers, but kind of took that money and they spent it on Hal Vaitai here, guard / right tackle for the Eagles. Also played some left. Had his moments when they went to the Super Bowl, but also has been a spot player. I'm very curious on your thoughts on this. 5-year deal, $50 million bucks. Grifka, I'm gonna help you out. I know you aced the Wonderlic, but that's around $10 million per. For Vaitai, what do you think?
You might as well get the belt because I don't know. I'm not for sure. He's got like 4 starts underneath him, and like you said, when they went to the Super Bowl, he filled in for Jason Peters, and he did obviously well enough. They won the Super Bowl with him. But
Grifka, is this where you repeat my whole take again?
No, because this is something I was listening to the radio today, and this guy was talking about how he runs like a business, and like they have franchises of this business over in Philadelphia, and he brought up this guy's name, and he says they all kind of chuckled, especially at what they paid him, and they said all the guys just pretty much said, well, yeah, he's okay. So I guess I don't know if he's going to be better than Rick Wagner. I'm glad Rick Wagner went to the Packers, so he can suck there. So I'm pretty happy with that. But I don't know about the contract. That just seems like an awful lot for a guy who's kind of unproven. But that's just me. I mean, you may feel different. I know how you feel about contracts sometimes, but me, I think they overpaid this guy.
Sounds a lot of the similar points to what I said, but nonetheless, Grifka, let's talk about your buddy for a second. So your buddy said he's okay. So in the Detroit Koolaid Cast world, I mean, I always say that if the guy's not a Hall of Famer, you hate him. Your buddy's saying that he's okay would mean that you probably think he's not.
He ain't that great.
Like
I said, I've watched very limited film on this guy. Like 0.
Grifka, you didn't catch this guy in your lazy boy, or you don't have extensive notes. I'm sure that surprises all the Detroit Kool-Aid drinkers. Grifka, let me fill you in for a second, because unlike you at times, I do a little bit of homework. So I knew this guy. I knew the name. I'm always a big fan of kind of that Samoan offensive lineman or Polynesian, whatever you want to call it, where they just really seem to be tough guys. So I like that. I hate his name because, like I say, we're never going to get that first one right. But I like his flex. I went and I watched some of them. The thing that I don't like is he does seem like a player. You know those tackles where they just get off kilter, or they get beat with speed, or they just don't look fluid, like moving, where, yeah, sometimes they bully you, but sometimes they just get like ran right past and you think they're in quicksand. Like, I feel like when he gets on you and buries you in the run game, it looks great. And then there's times where speed rushers or even power guys get after him, and he's just, as you would note, he's either on roller skates or he just sort of like looks, so out of place, like he can't bend or can't do anything. So, I went and I looked at his PFF grades, and to me, Vaitai was a guy that he had like a 72, I want to say, overall this past year. And people were noting his run grade. I mean, his run grade was in the 60s, 70s, but his pass blocking was, in the 50s. And you go look at his game by game, you're looking at scores of like 18, 20, 28, somewhere in that range. And then there's lots of games where he's like 60, 65-ish, on average. So nothing that blows me away. And then what I also do, Grifka, unlike yourself, is I went on the old YouTube and I was like, let me pull up a couple interviews. I want to hear this guy talk. I want to see if he loves football. I want to kind of get a feel for him. And so I watched like his Super Bowl interviews and a couple other things. And I don't know. To me, I didn't see the fire. I didn't see the grit. I didn't see anything that made me feel like this guy just eats, sleeps, and breathes football. He seemed like kind of that big wimp, a guy that I wouldn't say that to his face, of course, but he's like 6'6", 320. But when he talks, you're just kind of like, man, this guy's no bulldozer. This guy ain't gonna like get after me, if I say something wrong to him. So I didn't love his mentality. The positives that I want to give the Kool-Aid drinkers is I think the Lions are betting on that couple things. One, that this guy is on the cusp of he hasn't got a ton of playing time, but he's ready. So they think they're getting him kind of on that low end. You always want to buy low, sell high type of thing. So I think they didn't necessarily buy low, but I think they're trying to get a tackle that's not only better than Rick Wagner, more powerful, better in the run game, but a guy that's maybe on the cusp of being something or being a good player. When you look at the 5 years, 50, I mean, I don't know all the details on it. I'm going to see here online if they actually have the details, but Bob Quinn's been known to backload things. It's not a light number, but when you're talking about tackles, I mean, you're not getting tackles for $5-6 million. So when you get up to 10, it's sort of like, yeah, he's got to be above average to justify the amount. But everybody that's better is getting quite a bit more, or is more on average. Elite guys are 17, 18-ish, somewhere in that range. So quite a bit more. So With all that being said, Grifka, you're going to love this because this is what you do on the show. I put out on Twitter after I did some homework, and again, first blush, I hope I'm wrong, but I was not a huge fan of this signing. I felt like overall he didn't give me a ton of confidence, that he's going to come in and be some rock over there or a bulldozer. Like, I'd like one or the other or both, preferably. I feel like he'll come in, he'll have his moments, he'll also get our quarterback killed a few times. He'll seem overpaid. I could see him being here 2 to 3 years of that deal and then being gone. But my optimistic thought, which again, you know how the show goes,
Drink it in, man.
is that Vaitai comes in and he's better than Rick Wagner from the jump. He gives us a little more punch in the run game. He's able to get some of this inconsistencies, as I called it online, figured out, and be a good football player for this team. They're going to play him at right tackle, or they might even slide him inside, depending on what else they do. But that's my long-winded answer on Hal Vaitai. And to me, I really hope it works out, but it was one of those where, looking at the big scope, even I saw some people real positive and this, that, and the other. For me, when I looked at everything, he didn't check enough boxes for me to be real fired up about it.
I have a quick follow-up for you on that. No, you said, like you mentioned, he's kind of like one of those flex guys, can play, maybe guard if needed. He seems more suited for the right tackle position, even though when he filled in for Jason Peters, he played decent. But, like you said, sometimes he can have, be on skates, get bulldozed a lot. Why do you think, Bob Quinn, everybody's like, why didn't they just play Crosby out there? Because Crosby seems to be kind of like the same thing. Is that just something where maybe this is, I don't know, maybe they can, use him either at guard, Vaitai either at guard or tackle, or maybe Crosby's going to be the guard, and I don't know. What don't they seem kind of like the same thing?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think that it's hard to figure out Bob Quinn because I feel like he's always looking for not only for depth, but you always hear that you're trying to set yourself up for the draft where you can just kind of go in loosey-goosey and kind of take best available. You never know how things are going to fall. So I feel like if you're just ignoring the position and assuming Crosby, then you don't have your swing tackle. If you bring in a guy like this, then between him and Crosby, one of those guys can be the swing tackle or the move guy. You also may bypass guard completely if it never matches up, and maybe then it's between, Benchwell, Crosby, and Hal Vaitai. So, I mean, I think it gives you a lot of options, and I just think Bob Quinn likes to sort of give himself options. The bad part is a lot of his options, because he hasn't went for the slam dunk. Like people were saying, why don't you just pay $4 or $5 million more, 2-3 years less, and go get Conklin or go get somebody that's a little more established. And I just think he's always sort of on the cusp, looking for that next guy, looking for the guy that's a little under the radar that you can bring to Detroit, and maybe that won't ask questions, won't bunk the system, and that will just go out and play football. And I think Vaitai is just going to be happy to get what he got and be a player, and hopefully he can just perform on the field. And unfortunately, Bob Quinn, all the resources put in, have not done that, from the offensive line on a consistent level. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
It's a good point right there. I like that. They just, like you said, he can kind of be the guard tackle, and maybe, it's like kind of one of those things where I know in the sport we shall not speak of, where they like to have those guys that can play multiple positions, and that's what he's looking for with the, his offensive linemen. If there's injuries, they can just kind of, I want to say, plug and play, but it's a lot easier to move those type of guys around as opposed to like somebody, well, you're just right tackle, but we have to bump you over to left tackle where everybody knows the footwork, the angles, everything's different. So,
right. And that's what I think I've learned the most from, is that that is super valuable. But the other part of it is you really do need guys that can play. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're super versatile, like you're jack of all trades, master of none, but you're like literally a master of none. Like, I need you to be good. So like, I feel like that's what we're still trying to find. And like, you hear me back up Taylor Decker on this, but I'm not calling him a Pro Bowl or Hall of Famer. I'm just saying, he's average, above average, and now we have to pay him like he's elite. We might have issues there, and we've got some other issues on the offensive line. So I don't think he's done by any means. I could definitely see putting a high draft asset as well, but Vaitai was a big signing. Grifka, let's keep this moving. We got to talk about a few more before I take our break. And then I also want to run some names by you of guys that are still. I made kind of a simple board this year. I just picked, 20, 30 names out of the millions of free agents of, big name guys that we watch for, guys that interest me to some degree. And I've kind of been pulling them off. So I've got a few of those left that I kind of want to run by you. But let's keep working our way down through. So the next big signing that seemed to come through was, to me, this is a very intriguing signing. Jamie Collins. Like, everybody knows the name. I know probably 3-4 years ago, I was trying to get this guy in those IDP fantasy leagues because he was just an absolute monster of a guy. He could fly over the football field. He could turn it over. He could rush the passer. He could drop in coverage. Like, he just seemed like a huge, kind of a big defensive end that could be all over the football field. But he's going to be 30, 31 years old. He only made a couple million last year going back to the Patriots. Had some big games with them, and assuming that he's going to be able to fit in this system. But again, I don't want to tip my hand, but I'm a little disappointed because I was telling Logan Lamorandier we already got guys that are 250 and whatnot. Like, maybe they're not the greatest in coverage. Maybe Jamie Collins is a better guy in coverage, but I was really looking for that different type of linebacker that we don't have, rather than adding another guy that's big, bulky, even though this guy's more of an athlete than Tavai or, gosh, what's the guy you always make fun of?
Jared Davis.
Oh yeah, him too.
Christian Jones.
Christian Jones, yeah. So I feel like he fits that, but I don't know. Then the more you think about it and you go watch Jamie Collins, and he's probably more what Patricia and Quinn have wanted for a while. He's still, probably more athletic than most of our guys. He knows the scheme, tough guy. I mean, I've heard some interviews with him. Now he's a ball player. He's a nasty football player. Grifka, I don't know yet, but I'm nearly already deeming him a dog, Grifka. I think he's got dog tendencies in him. What do you think about Jamie Collins coming here at 30 years old, but on a big deal, 3 years, $30 million bucks? And they also, go ahead and answer that, and then we'll get to the second half of it.
Like you said, I think I would have liked this signing about 4 years ago.
Right.
It's he went to Cleveland, from the Patriots. He was, doing well there. They traded him to Cleveland. I think he had a good year in Cleveland. The next year he got injured. And he went back to New England. Like you said, he did one of those contracts where he,
Grifka,
was a bet on himself.
You know what you got when they trade you to Cleveland?
What's that?
No chance. That's what you got.
Just ask Odell Beckham, who's going to blow up in 2020, by the way. But yeah, they exiled him to Cleveland. And that's like you said, that was the cutoff. He was like really good. And then they dumped him to Cleveland and was like, what? Jamie Collins is a beast. And I wrote some friends and I was like, wasn't that 4 years ago? Because like he was wholly off the radar, and then he came back and sort of blew up, and I had to look at his age. I'm like, 30 really is on the backside. It's not like he's 32, 33, but I don't know. I mean, if you get a couple years out of him, though, like I've seen a lot of positive feedback sort of on him from some different experts as well as Twitter. Like, I think this one could surprise us, where he could come in here, be a leader at that linebacker position, move them all around, get the coverage that you were always complaining about on the show. I'm hot and cold on this of like not loving it, but the more I read, it's kind of like it could work out.
Yeah, if he can cover tight ends, I'll be all for it. But like it's odd how you mentioned like his contract. I mean, 30 years. I think I saw somewhere like 18 of that was guaranteed. So
right,
that's a hefty chunk. And like you said, he knows the system. Matt Patricia knows him, knows what he can do. But gosh, it's like I don't think he. I don't know. I think he got a little dinged up last year, but didn't miss a whole lot of playing time. He still had good numbers last year for New England. And just, age and contract and 3 years. Once again, we can do dollars and cents later. That if it's backloaded, it might be one of those cap casualties come for a third year.
Yeah, I think so.
Just
but
throw that out there.
Grifka, just to educate you again, I know I do that sometimes on the show. Like most NFL contracts are half guaranteed. So if a guy gets 30, 15, 18 billion is going to be guaranteed. The rest unguaranteed. It's about how you stack it. So I forget what it was. He's making like 4 million in the first year, then it jumps up to like 8 or 10, 12, somewhere in that range. It kind of expedites as you go. But Again, to educate you on Jamie Collins too, like Grifka, this is a guy, he's like 6'3", 250 some pounds. He's always been a beast in coverage for his size. I mean, he's pretty ridiculous in that area. He plays that big linebacker rush end role so he can come off the edge, and they can also put him in the middle. Like, that's why this guy's so crazy, and why he was so crazy at 26, 25 years old, is because who can you put at middle linebacker, then move him out and rush the quarterback, and then, oh, by the way, go guard this tight end real quick. This guy can do all those things. It just depends, is he going to fall off, or does he have a couple really good years left? And will Patricia and Quinn be saying, man, this is the guy I've been waiting on? Because kind of unfortunately, with this move, we got to talk about after they signed him, kind of that next day or halfway through the next day, Devon Kennard cut. I mean, this was a guy I've been on the show kind of supporting, saying, man, this guy's a leader. He's really solid. He seems to get after the quarterback, 7 sacks the past couple of years, from a guy we had no idea who he was, basically coming from the New York Giants, and he was on really nobody's radar. They let him go, saved a big chunk of change, and I think that's just a sign that this regime thinks Jamie Collins still has more juice than Kennard does, and just is going to be a better nasty dog, leader, whatever you want to call it. And they just moved on in that direction. What'd you think of that counter move as well?
Yeah, was it Kennard? I believe is a couple years younger than him, but I believe Jamie Collins is faster. So I will take the speed aspect of that, as long as, once, like we always talk about, there's a point where in a football player where they seem to get older quicker. So as long as, Collins are like none of those nagging injuries, that he had the last couple of years pop up, I will take his speed. Definitely. I know he's faster than Kennard. And like you said, I mean, we liked what Kennard did. He really produced for this team. I believe he's the most productive linebacker for the team last year. And it was one of those guys that we were kind of, when we had talked earlier shows, that we were kind of like, okay, we really like him, but we don't think, the Lions really need to look at that. But like me and you always talk, and I know we say, if you're always looking to get better, and if you believe, Matt Pat and Bob Quinn feel he's a better upgrade than Kennard, I mean, I would have to lean towards that, even though Kennard's a couple years younger. I like I like Collins a little better, simply as athleticism.
Yeah, real quick, I know we got to keep this moving, but I'm just looking at his numbers. Cap hit of $6 million the first year, then it jumps up to 11, and then 12. Base salary 4, 8, and then up to nearly 10. So that's kind of how Bob Quinn structures it. So those last year or so, yeah, he can move on, and not really. There's also potential out in 2022. So 2 years, 20 is kind of what it works out to be, with a little bit of dead cap. So to me, not a horrible contract. I'm just really curious to see how it plays. And to your point, I think you make, again, Grifka, I'm just giving you total dap on this show. Another great point. Like, the thing I've always been arguing for is that people just hating on Bob Quinn for these misses and these things he hasn't done. I think it's somewhat positive that he's at least willing to not only admit it, but he's pretty fearless with just moving on. So if he thinks Jamie Collins is better than Kennard, he made that move. If he thinks Vaitai is better than Rick Wagner, he made that move. And that's what they've got to do, man. When you win 3 football games, injuries or not, you got to try to get better at each spot, and just be who's the better player, and that's the person we want now. Is Jamie Collins the greatest outside backer we could have got? I don't think so, but I do think they think, and I probably think too, that yeah, he's more speed, he's got more juice, he's got more nasty to him probably than Devon Kennard, and just kind of that time that they felt was a better move. Grifka, let's keep it moving. 2 more before we take a quick break here. Nick Williams, this was a guy that I caught on to last year, actually, one of my real deep 32-team fantasy leagues where we have defensive players. I found this guy kind of late the year. I was like, man, look at this Nick Williams from the Chicago Bears. And I looked at him. He's this beast. He reminded me of Nathan Shepard, who's a guy with the Jets that came out a couple years ago. Just these monstrous arms, long levers for arms, as well as just look like an athlete. Now, this guy's 30 years old, but he had 6 sacks last year for Chicago. Never had really done anything else before that. I thought he was impressive. Some of the things I saw from him, as well as those numbers aren't kind of no joke. So I felt like this was a decent roll of the dice. Again, you're talking 2 years, $10 million. that just seems to be the going rate. Is like you're not getting players for much under 3, 4, 5 million these days, no matter who they are. Talk a little bit about Nick Williams, then I want you also to combo meal it with the bringing in the quarterback of Chase Daniel. This is a guy I think we've goofed on the show before, but also a guy that in some ways is kind of that really prototypical Sean Hill type Dan Orlovsky backup, where he just knows he's a backup. He studies hard. He can help you a little bit in a pinch, even though he doesn't win many football games unless he's playing against our Detroit Lions. But they give him a 3-year deal at 33 years old, but also the money is not much when you're talking about a quarterback. So 3 years, 13. I mean, you get anybody that's above a Chase Daniels quality, you're taking that number from $4 million bucks up to, 8, 9, 10-ish, with what these guys make today. So I thought it was just a real cheap signing, a guy that if him and Stafford get along well and he can just sort of hold that clipboard and help him in the film room, I don't mind it. So didn't really mind either of these signings. The quarterback one makes me scratch my head a little bit.
Yeah, Nick Williams, I'll start with him. You mentioned you said he's 30. He's 6'4", 300 pounds. Just glanced at those before. He had a decent year. I mean, he's a little bit of a journeyman, been on a couple other teams, but he did have his best season last year with the Bears. So, you're taking somebody away from Chicago. That's not a bad thing. And if they're just looking for this guy to kind of be the space heater, a la that what they wanted Snacks Harrison to be, I'm good with that. And we all know Detroit's or the way the defense Matt Pat runs. He's not looking for the defensive tackle to get an awful lot of pressure on the quarterback. It's kind of like just push the center or guard back towards the quarterback, collapse the pocket that way. If you get a sack, great. Be the run defender. Know your gap. So yeah, like you said, the price I don't have a problem with it. Like you mentioned, I have to totally agree with you on this. That's the standard. When I heard that, I'm just like, that's kind of what it's like you said, it's what they're going for right now. So, I like the signing. I believe they still have to do a little more work though. Obviously, I think they may, I don't want to say need a bigger name, but I think maybe somebody, maybe a little more dominant, but I don't know if this guy's going to be like, one of those guys that offensive coordinators really, really have to worry about. But I do like the signing. He might be one of those under the radar guys who plays pretty decent. So you mentioned Chase Daniel. That's another one of the guys. It's just, I guess it comes down to obviously Matt Pat and Bob Quinn thought what the Lions had last year. Obviously, those quarterbacks weren't good enough to win any games, even though there was many injuries, throughout the offense and the defense. To win games. So you bring in a guy that's been around, obviously he knows the league, knows what it takes to be a backup, be thrown into the game at any point. He's that guy. So, like you said, I once again, I have to agree with you on this, Derek. I know when our fans generally don't like that, they like when we butt heads, but, that's one of those signings, it's like, okay, if you're looking to go super cheap, then you're going to end up with another Jeff Driscoll, but, his contract I'm okay with.
Oh man, everybody out there listening, like I can't get to all these Griff Cabells. I mean, between the I agree with yous to the you mentioned this before to the I'm not quite for sure's to the obviously's to all the other Grifka gimmicks. I mean, the bell is hot today. I'm gonna wear it out, but I try to get to as many as I can for the people out there. Grifka, real quick on Nick Williams. I again did some homework, unlike yourself, and I watched a few interviews on him. Seemed like a great dude, hard worker, leader. Natural leader. They said he came in Chicago even with the 1 year or so he was there, and just was a locker room leader, really solid guy from the couple interviews I watched. And he blew up the Lions, just ran by Frankie Ragnow on a play and made a sack. So one of his highlights was against his new team, and I hope he comes in. I definitely still think they'll add to that position, but I thought it was worth the roll of a dice, and they still got work to do, no doubt. Like, none of this really blows me away. Again, I try to be a little more critical than I am at times on some of these because that's how I feel. Like, I don't think they were slam dunk great moves, but I think they all kind of have their own upside as well as their own risk. So, Grifka, let's do this. Let's take a break, and we come back. I kind of want to dip our toe into kind of who the Lions lost, who they cut, and get your quick thoughts, but then also talk to the Detroit Kool-Aid drinkers about a few people that I still got on my list that are still on my board and get them pumped up about who we could maybe still add, as well as talk to you a little bit about that. So how about after the break, we eat a little bit of this?
Cornbread!
Sound like a plan?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, everybody, we'll be right back. All right, everybody, back from the break. And like I said, lots of good talk there from me and Grifka back and forth about the guys that the Lions have signed. Grifka, I just want to get your quick thoughts on some of the people we lost. So obviously Rick Wagner is gone. He's with your favorite quarterback now up there in Green Bay. We've got Glasgow went to Denver. Some of the other fringe Lions players are kind of either still out there or just went different places. Any thoughts? You think any of these losses that we've had, Devon Kennard being cut, you think these things are going to come back to haunt us, or do you think the Lions are sort of sneakily trying to get better at spots? I mean, quick thoughts on the subtractions in conjunction with who we talked about earlier, who they added.
The Rick Wagner loss, you know how I felt about that. I'm okay with that, and and Graham Glasgow, that one I think that one might hurt us a little more. He was really developing to something good. We always talked about how he wasn't that great. He wanted to get paid. He was, people were going to pay him top dollar, maybe to get him. It's like, you're going to develop a little more, and the Lions weren't willing to do that. But based on what the Lions have had in their interior offensive line, I think the Glasgow one may hurt us a little more than anything. But still, I mean, I think we have both mentioned this on the last show. If we were the GM, we weren't looking to pay him what he was going to get on the open market. So, Graham, it was nice to have you here, but just I couldn't see paying you what you were looking for there as well. Kennard, I don't know if he's going to be one of those games where, if he ends up on another team where the Lions end up playing him, he might be one of those guys that, circles it type thing. You always hear those stories looking to get at your old team, but you had mentioned he's not one of those linebackers that the offensive coordinators like, you need to watch out for this guy every play. Let's face it, get the bell. He's not Lawrence Taylor. So, he's a decent, outside linebacker. And he obviously, we obviously didn't see him do a whole lot of coverage of tight ends. So I don't think that one's going to come back to bite us either. I think the biggest move, you missed that, was we were talking about the guy. Once again, how do you forget the long snapper? That's it's what I got to say. It's just like, how do you miss Don Muleback? That might be one of the biggest signings the Lions did.
The reason I don't bring up Don Muhlbach, Grifka, because it's death taxes and Don Muhlbach. Like, it's not even a discussion point. He's coming back. I mean, I don't know what the Lions are going to do when they actually have to, find another long snapper, because it's been about 2 decades since they had to. I know Bob Quinn made the foolish choice of trying to, but he's coming back. If he can get out on the football field, he'd be snapping probably for another couple of years here for the Lions if he can. So I didn't think it was worth mentioning, but yeah, you're right. The mule is back. Everybody knows that. Let me hit real quick on a couple of them. So, Rick Wagner got like no money going up to the Packers. Like 2 years, like $6-8 million in total, somewhere in that range. So it's like, yeah, if we could have got you for 2 years, it's $6 million a pop or less, I'm sure we would have considered keeping you, but obviously we couldn't work that out. So I don't think he's going to be a big issue. I mean, he'd have to play much better, I think, to kind of be a legit starter. A couple people were actually asking me, you think he'll go up to Green Bay and be a starter? It's kind of like, he'd have to play in the line a lot better, but he'd have to, you can kind of tell by the contract that he's a depth body and a guy that has some upside, but also is sort of just never played up to the potential everybody thinks he has at his size and kind of the mentality he has. Seems like the perfect look and set for an offensive lineman. It's just not there. Graham Glasgow, for me, was always a guy that, people just seem to fall in love with him. Like he was the Brandon Inge or I know we're not supposed to speak of that sport, or some of these guys that people just, the Red Wings are always like, oh, Justin Abelke. It's like, he's not that great of a hockey player, but we just like him because he's kind of that mid-level, no nonsense guy. But like Graham Glasgow never blew anybody away off the ball. He wasn't making Pro Bowls left and right. He was never super dominant. He was just a nice 3rd round pick. And here's what you got to watch, Grifka. And this is why I hit you with that a couple weeks ago, that the Lions played him every game for 4 years and paid him a total of $3 million and have now moved on instead of paying him $12 million per year, which I think is nearly what he got from Denver. So there's a really sneaky way in the NFL to first, second, third, even fourth, fifth round, if you can not only get those guys, but they can not only be on your roster, but play at a average, above average, or even sometimes hopefully a superstar level, great, you do that. And then when it comes time to pay him is when it's time to really decide, is this guy a blue chip or is this guy a difference maker? And if not, that's when you let them walk and you churn out another draft pick. You churn out another low end free agent that hopefully can do the similar things. And that's what I think Bob Quinn's doing. And people don't love it because they're just like, he's good, we have to keep him. Yeah, he was really good at whatever that is. That works out to be like 700, 800K per year. Now he's 12 million per year as a right guard. Like the financials don't make sense. We have to move on at that point. We have to use our brains and say like at the bargain bin it was awesome. Now not so awesome. So Bob Quinn's pretty shrewd in that way, and people don't like it because they just fall in love with players like yourself sometimes. Say he's good, we have to keep him. Okay, well, there's a lot of other factors that go into it. So I'm not, good luck to Graham Glasgow. I'm glad he made some money. I'm glad he's a Michigan guy, but, he wasn't a guy I was looking to spend big on or keep. And then, Devon Kennard to me is, as much as I liked his leadership and stuff, he's a very functional, basic football player. Every sack that he got, those 7 sacks per year, they always seem like cleanups. They always seem like things that, most players could get. He never really wowed me. He had a little bit of hustle. Some of his sacks were kind of that second, third rush where he was able to get the quarterback on the ground, but nothing that wowed me. So as much as I rooted for him, and sometimes on this show I said, Devon Kennard's turned into a really nice player, as much as I knew that, yeah, if they see an upgrade or if they think they can get better, that they should do so. So that's my quick take on those guys. Grifka, let's get into some of these names. So a couple of the names that I pulled off from my board. Again, it's pretty thin. A lot of the guys that I had circled, have went to other teams already. So I just pulled 3 names. These are 3 names that I feel like we haven't addressed, at a high level. They may be good fits. There's plenty of other names you could bring up. The first name I have here is the most expensive, and I don't feel like they've done anything to do what we say, which is address the position opposite of Darius Slay, assuming he's going to be here. So, yeah, you could be dead set on trying to trade down and get Jeff Okudah, but I think you still need to bring in a pretty good corner in case that doesn't work out or in case something else better pops in your brain as we head to the draft. So to me, Logan Ryan is kind of the corner. He made $10 million on average, his last couple years there with Tennessee. He's played with the Patriots before. He's 29 years old. So if you could get him on a 2-3 year deal with the back end being cuttable, I think he'd be the corner I'd somewhat like now that, some of the other guys that went. I'm also not opposed to Chris Harris, but I've heard him talking about the Chiefs and a few other teams, so I think he could be going somewhere else. Timmy Jernigan, defensive tackle, played in Philly. This guy I've always liked since the draft process. He only makes $2 million on average, 27 years old. I just always feel like he's got some things he could bring to the table. I don't know if he fits the Lions scheme perfectly, but seemed like a guy that's still out there in the market that could help them in the defensive interior. And another guy I've always loved since the draft, 26 years old, kind of a strong hit, big hit in safety, Carl Joseph, played with Oakland. This guy kind of came in the league with a lot of hype and then sort of disappeared, but has sort of rebounded, I think, where he sort of found his groove and been able to play a little bit better. So if the Lions were looking for that Cam Chancellor, looking for that big safety that can hit, as well as Will Harrison, Tracy, that are a little more flexible, I thought those were 3 names I just kind of plucked off. Again, I'm not digging for these underground gems that some of the draft nicks out there know, more so just a couple names that jumped on my board that are still out there that may be options at positions of need. So any thoughts on those guys or anybody you have in your brain that's like, hey, that might be somebody the Lions could still tackle and help their football team?
You mentioned Logan Ryan. I like the Logan Ryan. If the Lions, like you said, were able to get him for a decent deal. It's just another one of those things, though. One thing that worries me are they just bringing in former Patriots 1-0 because they know the system, but I think Logan Ryan, like you said, he did pretty good at Tennessee, so that's one of those things that might be the 6 degrees of separation there. He's not coming right from New England. We've seen other things, and that would be a guy that I would like right there. Defensive tackle, you mentioned a guy. I mean, everybody was kind of like looking, DJ Reader. He signed with the Bengals? So was I think a guy still out there? Unless I missed it, was it like I kind of like Dontari Poe. He's kind of one of those big space heater guys as well. A little bit athletic for a big guy as well. That would be a guy I don't know. Maybe it's one of those names. Maybe I'm just a name guy, Don Terry Poe. It just kind of rolls off the tongue there. But
Grifka,
I think
who's your new favorite player in the NFL draft? Tell the people.
Well, it's got to be. Was it Chin, Mr. Chin?
Jeremy Chin.
Jeremy Chin. That's right.
Because why?
Oh, because if he gets drafted by the Colts, we're going to have the Chin and Sin combo.
Which I told you after the show, we already have the shirts ready for print, which is Rocky Chin. We know that's going to... But Grifka, I don't even have Don Terry Poe anywhere on my board. This guy's like... I bet you if I pull up Don Terry Poe, he's like 33 to 35 years old. I mean, he was good about 6 years ago. You want to talk about Jamie Collins.
I'm not looking to give the guy big money or anything like that, but I mean, the guy's just a big space heater, man. He'd be part of the rotation type there.
Yeah, I don't know.
You have to be more productive than what Snacks Harrison was, and then go sit in the locker room and cry and say, "I want to retire." And then he's walking out of the locker room. It's like, "Oh, you want to be cut because you want to retire?" "Oh, no, I don't want that anymore. But go ahead and cut me." Okay.
Yeah.
Well played there.
He's not that bad. 29, it says, with 350 pounds at 6'3". I mean, he had his moments, but I think he's kind of... it says with Carolina. I don't even know if he's a free agent or maybe I just didn't even put him on my list because it just seems like he fell off like 4 years ago. But the other names, Griffith, I didn't bring up to you. Those were kind of like 3 targets I had on my little short board. The other names
where's Ndamukong Suh? How do you not have Ndamukong Suh on your board?
Griffith, don't make me go on my Sue rant. I know you loved him, like what my thoughts were about him. But that ship has sailed.
If they got him back and Kelvin Johnson, just imagine this team.
Oh my gosh, I didn't hear that. Grifka, the other names that people are going to be thinking about are the names that are out there. Michael Pierce is a really good football player, 27 years old, from Baltimore, only made $3 million on average. So if you bump him up to even double that, I could see him being the defensive tackle. That's actually my hope, is that Michael Pierce will come in here. Again, I love Baltimore guys. They always seem like real good players. Shelby Harris out of Denver is a little bit older, 29, 30 years old. That was the name you heard bantied about before free agency, that he's going to come to the Lions and be really good. I'm not a huge fan, but based on all the people that have flown off the board, I could see that. And then a name I'm surprised that hasn't went yet, because he seemed to start out really good in New Orleans. This guy's only 26 years old. He's sort of like that guard tackle as well, but seemed to have really good years. I don't know if he's fallen off here in the near future, but he's still out there on the market. Andres Pete, big old guard for the I think he's like real tall for the Saints, and a guy that, again, loved him in the draft. Man, it was one of the guys I always thought would be a good player at the next level, and he's proved to be that, but he has not been scooped up by anybody. And we still have that somewhat gaping hole. I mean, you just never know where like Benchwell and some of these people are at. Like, maybe they have these huge plans that we have no idea about. But I feel like where the Lions are with holes as we kind of close up the show is they still need a little help at defensive tackle. I would still like to see the corner addressed, even if it's just a upper mid guy. But in case you get rid of Slay, or if you're going to keep Slay, just get a middle of the road guy so that we're not pigeonholed in the draft of only taking a Kuda or taking a corner in those first 2 rounds if other positions present themselves. I could see another safety if they're willing to move on from Tavon. And then on the offense side of the ball, I wouldn't mind Devontae Freeman. I know people are just dogging on this guy. Like, he hasn't produced what I had to hear on the radio since 2016. It's like Devontae Freeman, if he's healthy and doesn't have concussion issues, is a little ball of thunder and can still run the ball, can catch it. A couple years ago, I took him into fantasy and I watched him tight. I was like, look at this guy. He runs with ferocity. Yeah, the injuries are an issue, but if he got cut the way he did, he's not going to look for huge money. But I don't want them to bring in a big name. I don't think like Melvin, or even take a running back in the first 2 rounds. So I feel like Devonta Freeman would be a guy you bring in and just be a piece of the puzzle, or guy that could compete. And the rest of the offense, to me, is pretty much ready to roll, unless you want to address the O-line a little bit more. So any other big wants and needs that you're thinking before we close up this episode?
You mentioned another quarterback in case, it seems like a lot of the big names are going. All those articles were, if you didn't get that big name that you're shooting for, then you're calling the lines to see if Darius Slay's available. One question for you. You mentioned, a couple cornerbacks, obviously. What do you think about Brian Poole from the Jets?
Not a fan. I mean, the Jets have been just a tire fire. In the words of Matt Derry at cornerback position, they brought in a lot of bums there that haven't worked out. Since Darrelle Revis left, they haven't been able to. I don't know. There's this wise man Grifka uses this phrase. It's called, they haven't been able to cover coffee table. I don't know if you've heard that one before. I mean, it's.
No, I've never heard that one. That one's cool. I should start using that.
Right. I mean, it always gets one of these. But yeah, he's not a guy. There are some other corners though. I mean, the corners actually have not flown off the market. I'm looking at my little side free agent board, and there's probably 6, 8, 10 names on there that are still somewhat out there. It's just a matter of what flavor ice cream they want, and you kind of got to address it, especially if you're going to trade Slay. I feel like the Slay trade is sort of less and less likely the more he's sort of on the team, but there have been some crazy trades going around the NFL. I'm sure we'll talk about that and a whole bunch of other things Friday. Grifka, I think we've talked about who the Lions brought in, who they lost, who's still out there, gave the people a lot to think about. I mean, I know they always want to hear what the almighty Grifka has to say about the Detroit Lions, so you know what they want to hear at the end of the show. I mean, Grifka, you got anything else for the people?
Nope.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening to Detroit Koolaid Cast. We know it's been crazy. We know there's lots going on in the world as well as in the NFL. Keep your ears. I don't think the Lions are done. I think they got some other moves coming, but we'll be covering all here on the Detroit Koolaid Cast and on Friday. Grifka's got a whole bunch of things set up for me. We're going to have a great show, so check us out then Friday morning. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Always remember to do this.
Drink it in, man.
And we'll catch you Friday right here on the Detroit Koolaid Cast. Take care, everybody. We're out.
Pack the bags, start the plane. This game is over. It is over. What a comeback by the Lions.
Drink it in, man.